Good evening and welcome. As most of you know, my name is Melissa Forrest and I am the programs coordinator here at BIST. So gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation are each vast subjects, but tonight we just want to take a quick look at pronouns. So this is an introduction to pronouns. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I got a little ahead of myself. Oops. For technology. So as we said, this evening is going to be looking at pronouns, and it's an introduction. So what are pronouns? But also, why are pronouns important? Mainly, why is BIST starting to incorporate the use of pronouns within our programs and our practice? In front of you here, there is a photo of Mr. Alex Brazen. Alex put together this webinar. He is a member and BIST consultant who has previously assisted with ABIjustice.org and the ABI Toolkit. Prior to COVID restrictions, Alex would often join us on BIST community outings. He is a talent artist who currently is working on BIST merchandise. He couldn't be here this evening, so I'm going to welcome some familiar faces this evening, as well as some new faces, and they're going to help present. So I'm just going to go ahead and let everybody here do a little bit of a roundtable, introduce themselves. So first, Olivia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia, and I'm a third-year Ryerson student who's currently doing my placement at BIST. It's nice to see you all tonight.
And next we have Aaron Palmer.
Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Palmer. I'm an occupational therapist, and I work at a private practice called Malamed Palmer. It recently changed the name to Malamed Palmer. It used to be Beverly C. Malamed and Associates, and it's been a year now since I've partnered with her. So it's nice to be here. I wish I could see everybody, but in time that'll come.
Thank you. And of course, Mary Para.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary. I'm the communications manager at BIST, and I've worked at BIST 7 years now. And I am really happy to be sitting in on this webinar. I'm sorry Alex couldn't be here, but this webinar means a lot to me. As a queer person, when I came out, which is over 2 decades ago, a lot of what I did in the queer community was work around being an ally to trans people and battling transphobia within the queer community, which at the time, and not that it's disappeared, but at the time it was quite, quite strong, especially in the lesbian community. So when I look back and I think how far this rights movement has come, and when I see that now we're at a place like BIST and we're talking about these issues, I think it's a great step forward. And as I said, I'm happy to be here tonight, and I'm happy to virtually see everyone who's here tonight.
Thank you, Mary.
Sorry, is this me? Anyways, so we'll start. What's up at BIST? So why are we doing this webinar? And as it says here, BIST is always committed to maintaining a diverse and inclusive space. And obviously, we don't want to just talk the talk, we want to walk the walk. So that means that we really want all our members, regardless of their age, their ethnic background, and class, and of course their gender and queer identities, to be honored and respected, and so that people can really be who they are as a complete person when they come into this. They don't just have to be the person who's living with the effects of brain injury, they bring their whole selves there. So we want to make sure everyone in the BIST community who are comfortable to is also comfortable to share their pronouns. And as you can see here, BIST staff right now who are comfortable to our students, we're disclosing our pronouns in our email, on our Zoom profile, and that's what we're trying to work towards. So to talk about what pronouns are, it's how we address each other. And I think we're so used to saying it, we don't even think about it necessarily. So the examples here are, she has great ideas. He is very creative. But it's also important to note, we don't always just say she or he, and that's always been the case. So maybe we don't know the gender of the person, or we might just even, without thinking it, not disclose the gender. So in this example here, oh, I wonder if they signed up for the party. I'm going to go remind them. So they're an important part of our vocabulary and culture, and that's, you know, why it's important to think of them. And as I said, so you might have noticed the BIST community is including their pronouns in emails or on Zoom profiles, and that at the start of programs, facilitators are also giving you the opportunity to use your pronouns when you're introducing yourself. And again, that's for people who are feeling comfortable too, because I think we've also had conversations in staff. It's easy for me as a person who was born female and identifies as a woman to say she, her freely. That's what people assume about me. And in this case, they're correct, but it's not always the case. So here, as we see, she, her, and he, him are the most common pronouns, but they are not the only one. And probably some of us have sort of heard in the community, or whether it's media, that some people are going by they, them, or other pronouns as well. So there's lots of pronouns out there, as I think people, sorry, can you go back?
I don't know how to go back.
It's fine. So they, them is a gender neutral pronoun that has always been used, and now maybe more people are using it. And those are people who might identify as non-binary, but that doesn't necessarily mean that just because somebody's using they, them, you don't assume how they identify. They may identify as a woman, a man, or non-binary. And sorry, Melissa, sorry, do you want to just take the next file?
Sure. So some people you may notice using multiple pronouns. So example, some people may use he, they, or she, they, or even any pronouns. So these pronouns are used, and I'm just going to read it right off the slide. They're used by people who feel comfortable with more than one set of pronouns. But the pronouns that they let you know that they're comfortable with, those are exclusively the pronouns that you should be using to address them. Most people want you to address them in a way that feels natural. And so, because as we find out, pronouns are part of our identity as people. So sometimes people alternate pronouns, and some people are open to whichever pronouns any given moment or time. So, and it's okay to kind of follow along with what you think is, or what they're letting you know is okay in that moment or space.
Sorry.
There are also gender fluid people. Sorry, Mary. So people whose gender identities change over time. So this, I think, is something that's really new to a lot of people within our society. But gender fluid people tend to use a different set of pronouns at any given time, or any part of the day. Sometimes people use materials to demonstrate or to show what pronouns they're using, such as earrings, bracelets. sometimes people will use, I've seen people use hair clips with different colored hair. So there's a variety of ways to do that. But gender fluid people, it really can fluctuate throughout the day and how they're expressing their gender identity.
So pronouns are important because it's how we address each other, and pronouns are a part of our identity. It's who we are. And again, I think for those of us who are identifying with the gender we were assigned at birth, it might not be something we think about necessarily. And then because it maybe hasn't been questioned, but then it's something that other people have really, it's a big part of their lives. And I think Melissa's found some amazing videos which can just explain this more. So we're going to watch one of them here, and she's going to take out her earbuds.
Because I may present more femme doesn't mean that I'm any less they, them.
You know what, that thing where you're eating a meal, but you're not really eating a meal, you're just kind of picking at food on the counter. My family and I were doing that one night, and I just kind of looked at them and said, hey guys, I'm non-binary. I don't have a gender.
In my opinion, gender is a universe. It is a broad spectrum of planets and stars and sky that truly cannot be contained into a binary.
My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and that's a non-negotiable. And they were all kind of like, okay. I think one of the main reasons pronouns are so important is because other than our name, it's one of the main ways that people identify and call us.
My pronouns are personally very important to me. Growing up, enculturated into kind of a system that really subscribes to toxic masculinity, I was always uncomfortable with being called dude, what's up, man? I was so bad at dapping people up, like, how like guys like do that whole like that thing. I was so bad at that, and it just I felt very alienated every time someone would do that to me.
So when someone identifies with a pronoun, they're essentially taking their little piece of that broad universe and identifying with that. And so in using their correct pronouns, we're validating that, yes, you are right in your identity and you are important and we're respecting you.
Coming into terms with my gender queer identity has been one of the most challenging but also rewarding things that I've done.
Laverne Cox kind of famously said, misgendering a trans person is an act of violence. And it is. It's an act of psychological violence. It's a denial of somebody's personhood and a complete refusal to acknowledge their identity, whether intentional or not. And so it is something that is entirely wrapped around our everyday lives. So just walking into a restaurant and hearing someone say she, will happen within 2 seconds of me entering, which doesn't happen about any of my other identities. They're not going to be like, oh, you straight person, that doesn't happen. But automatically someone will make assumptions about gender, which translate into pronouns, which mean that I will hear over and over again people saying something about my identity, which is false.
I think a lot of people associate expression with identity, and sometimes that's not the case. Oftentimes I'm in situations where I'm not the most safe being able to express my gender identity. And in those cases, even in those instances where I'm wearing basketball shorts or sneakers, you can't take my gender identity away from me because that's mine and not yours.
So many different options for who you are and how to define that. So when someone chooses a personal pronoun that they identify with, using that pronoun is a form of respect and a form of validation that, yes, this is your rightful identity and I will respect that.
And I know personally when I get misgendered, by strangers, it's one thing, but it's especially painful when it's people who are close to you. So when my parents misgender me, it's a knife in my heart because they're the people whose opinions matter more to me than anybody else's, and not knowing how to combat it. It is constant, and it is such a prevalent part of our society that being misgendered happens countless times in a day, and that builds up really quickly, and it can really be difficult for a person to hear over and over again because it invalidates your identity. over and over and over again. Pronouns are important because they are the smallest and easiest way that you can acknowledge somebody's identity.
And I also don't like that people call them their preferred pronouns because it's also not a preference. It's who they are. You need to use those pronouns. It's literally an extension of my arm or my leg. It's just as a part of me as a vital organ. My identity, although you can't see it, still needs to be validated just as much as you would validate the fact that I have 5 fingers or 5 toes.
So, Mary, do you want to continue?
Sure. Sorry about the blasted ad. I'll try better next time. Yeah, it's amazing. I'd forgotten that that video was done by 17. I don't know who here read 17 when they were a teenager, but it's changed. Anyways, so I think it's very natural to be nervous to ask what someone's gender pronouns are. It might not come naturally or be something that we're used to. So if that is the situation, there's some helpful tips. One is just pay attention to how other people address each other. And privately ask if someone's comfortable sharing their pronouns. The other workaround is use their name and use gender neutral language. Like, I wonder if Mary is coming tonight. I wonder how they're doing. And I mean, while the most important thing that I think everyone, that what matters the most is that we're being respectful. Sometimes we might make a mistake about misgendering someone, but the most important thing is to be respectful and learn and try to correct yourself. But the reality also is that being misgendered is triggering. So if it does happen, listen to the person you've upset and just reassure them that you know, you're gonna actively work towards respecting their identity and remembering to use their correct pronouns moving forward. And I think you know, there is usually a difference between you can make a mistake, but when you interact with someone and you fully respect them, I think those mistakes can be understood more so than if you know, someone is blatantly disrespecting a person's gender identity. The most important thing is that we have a respectful space to say the word again, and that we're building working on building an atmosphere of trust, right, with everyone. What does it mean to be queer? Okay, everyone, I'm gonna do this again. Sorry.
I can exist in the gray areas. I can be undefined, and that is okay.
I think probably the hardest thing for me when I came out in high school was not knowing what label to use. I thought that my confusion with my presentation was just me trying to fit into one of those boxes, butch versus femme versus lipstick. I was experiencing really deep dysphoria that was more related to my gender than my sexuality. Knowing that ultimately being a part of the queer community means more than any other label would have really helped me a lot in high school. There are a lot of connotations surrounding what it means to be trans. Do you have to have hormone replacement therapy? Do you have to have surgery? Do you have to change your name? There's no right or wrong way to be trans. That's the hardest part of my identity to come to terms with, because I have people all the time telling me, you're not this. How would you know? Only I can really know exactly who or what I am. We all had that experience in high school. We were like so desperately wanted a community to identify with, and so much of that was finding a label that fit perfectly.
Growing up, I hated my name, June. I thought it was just so Korean, and for me, it was like such a source of bullying. And so I was really trying to desperately search for a different name. And then, of course, as I kind of grew into who I was, I started really embracing my Korean American identity and also realized that I'm genderqueer. And I really like June because it sounds very androgynous. And, you know, I just think it really captures who I am. So June.
The more that we realized that gender and sexuality are all pretty much made up and a lie, we were just kind of like none of these words really fit, so we're just gonna go under this umbrella of queer, and like anyone who wants to know more, we can talk about that, but there isn't really a word for it. The cool thing about being queer is it's an umbrella term. You can embrace the ambiguity and fluidity of sexuality. You don't have to know exactly who or what you are, and that's okay.
When I started dating my partner, they kind of opened my eyes to the fluidity of sexuality. I realized that, okay, I'm not gay, but I can be in love with anyone, and I don't need to necessarily hang on to that label. I could expand it.
Thank you again, Mary. Whoops. Wow. Here we go. Okay, my apologies.
I know, I think those, just saw in the chat, those videos are incredible. So the biggest takeaway, and this is something that is new to me too, pronouns do not necessarily equal gender. So someone might go by they, but not identify as non-binary, and vice versa. So keep in mind, not all people of the same gender or gender identity use the same pronouns, and that people may use different pronouns with different people, like how we go by different names or nicknames in different situations. And a person's pronoun use can change over time because we all grow, and how we understand ourselves can go too. And I think this maybe is especially true with younger people right now, where there might be a bit of a sort of explosion of a variety of different gender pronouns. And, but regardless of age, maybe the pronouns they're going to use them their whole lives, or maybe for 2 minutes, but I mean, that's how they are in the moment. And I think, yeah, it's just, it needs to be respected and celebrated. All right.
This video, I had messaged Mary, but I think it went into the chat. This is talking a little bit about non-binary people. But Mary, when she was speaking, brought up something really interesting that I think we touch on here. That, or I read it somewhere, my apologies. But I mean, especially when you're younger, or you're trying to kind of figure out, now that you have a better understanding of some of the terms that we're kind of going over. Some people really are exploring their own gender, their own pronouns, their own orientation, their own expression. And I think that, it's also fair to say that it's okay to have even brief moments where you're just kind of trying it on and seeing what fits, even if you are an adult.
Sorry, Melissa, do you want me to bring up the video? I was just. Oh. Sorry, Melissa, should I bring up the video?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, just one. There we go. I got it ready.
That cause them to question, like, hey, maybe I don't actually fit into the definition of, man or woman, and that there's something else.
Hi, I'm Danny, and I identify as non-binary.
I'm Lindsay, and I identify as non-binary.
My name is Feng. I identify as non-gendered person. I'm Francois. I identify as genderqueer.
My name is James, and I identify as non-binary.
Non-binary is someone whose gender doesn't fall within the context of the binary that we set up in society. I am not male, I'm not female, I'm somewhere floating around in there.
Non-binary means acknowledging a wider range of experience.
For me, it means that I'm not identified with any specific gender, like male, female, or other things.
It's part of a larger kind of goal of questioning these assumptions about gender and questioning why there only need to be two.
It gives me the freedom to express myself. If I wake up one day and I want to spike my hair and do punk rock makeup, I can do it.
Every couple of decades, some designer decides that men's shorts are, suddenly 5 inches shorter or 5 inches longer. In the 70s, if you look at what men were wearing, they were like Rockettes, like shorts were up to here, and now it's like, get it, down to the knee. Non-binary is freedom from that whole game. It's like, I don't care what the men's department at Marshall suddenly has decided that like men need to wear. I'm gonna go for what makes me feel more authentic.
I tend to say gender is dependent on context and point of view. To me, it just makes me comfortable that I can just be this body that I have.
I identified as a cis gay male. Cisgender is when your gender identity aligns with the gender that you were assigned at birth based on your anatomy. I saw myself as a cis man and just thought, well, I paint my nails and I wear lipstick, but I'm a cis man. And I knew what genderqueer was and non-binary. I knew of them. And I was like, I support it, I love it, but it's over there. That's not me.
I identified as male before. I didn't really ever feel comfortable fitting into the masculine or male environments or just seeing myself as a man. I've always had questions as a child. I always would put on my mother's makeup and her lipstick. I identified quite a while before I came out to people.
I started identifying as non-binary when I was 17. I just knew that calling myself a woman and calling myself a girl did not feel accurate and did not feel good and did not feel like a home to me at that time in my life anymore.
Most people are still very confused about trans identity, non-binary, gender fluid.
Even though it's 2019, it's not something that everybody runs and like, oh, you're genderqueer, yay, hugs and kisses, we love you still.
The hardest thing about coming out at 17 is no one believes you. Everyone is like, wow, that's a really cute phase you're having.
Even when I'm saying what I identify with, people still have a specific imagination of what that means.
Most people are going to assume that you're one of two genders, a man or a woman, and so every single day you have to be correcting them and you have to be declaring that you're non-binary to pretty much every new person that you meet.
People often misgender me. Like the second I leave New York, I get called ma'am, like to my face.
A lot of times people get pronouns right twice, and then I find it's often the third time that people start slipping. A lot of people think that we're transitioning for some reason. Some people say, oh, so are you going through transition right now? And some people ask me, so do you still have a vagina?
Simplest way to ask about gender if you don't know someone is,
hey friend, what are your pronouns? That's it.
A lot of us are very different. Some people are like, don't misgender me, and it's a big thing. And I understand that, really, I do. Personally, I'm always very open and happy to talk to people about it. I remember a few times I went on job interviews and I dressed like how I am. And I did very, very well in the first interview. And they're like, oh, you did so well. Just when you come next time, can you dress like a boy? It's especially challenging in dating.
No one really knows how to deal with you and whether they're allowed to be attracted to you, really.
Some people, they just say
They want to date men. The worst is whenever someone's like, well, yeah, but you have a penis, right? People will be very fixated with anatomical gender.
You can't be seen as heterosexual, you can't be seen as homosexual. And so when you try to date a girl, it's like, you're too feminine, you're not masculine enough. And you try to date a guy who's gay and he's like, you're not masculine enough, or you're too feminine or something. It's always something.
I think people's knowledge of this is definitely getting a lot better with time.
Becoming more relatable. People are seeing us for who we are. And so I think that brings about this general air of acceptance.
I think the future of gender identity, hopefully, is one where we don't force the binary on everybody.
I think the future of gender identity is so much more like colorful and wide and different and like varied as we think it even can be.
I hope that the future will move towards more of individual expression rather than this mob mentality to follow the crowd to be like everybody else.
I definitely wish that we can all just pass through this phase of trying to categorize people and just take them as what they are.
Being able to reclaim our narratives, I think that's the next step, is that trans voices are the ones speaking for trans people and non-binary voices become the ones speaking for non-binary people.
There we go. My apologies. I take a little while with the spinning circle. So ultimately, what does this mean for groups at BIST? So we're going to talk a little bit about that because you're going to be noticing some changes within a lot of BIST programs, support groups, just across programming in general. So first, you may notice some new information being included in emails. I just have a little example in here, but this is actually an example of an email that was previously sent out, letting people know ahead of time that facilitators were going to be giving people the opportunity to introduce themselves. And this thing actually included their preferred names and their pronouns. And of course, if people were not comfortable sharing pronouns, that was okay. As well, if your preferred name was the one that you typically use and was attached to your email, then that was fine too. And facilitators or people who are hosting webinars, support groups, meetings can actually go ahead and change your name for you. And so we're all there to help you with that. So BIST also recognizes that this is a learning experience for all of us. So there's going to be some bumps, and that's okay, right? We're all kind of learning. We all come from very different backgrounds and experiences. So there is a lot of learning, but there's also a lot of unlearning to do in this process. And, you know, some people may need a little bit more support in this. They may need some more time or somebody to kind of, you know, talk through some of their feelings about this. And BIST staff is always on hand to do that. And we recognize that this is new to some of our members. Because again, this is, you know, we have learned so much in our own society in North America or whatever country, you know, we come from, our families come from, that really imparts how we view people, gender identity, and gender itself, and how we use pronouns. So this is brand new to everybody. So, you know, we're all learning together, and we are all supporting each other. So I'm just going to go ahead and read through this because it's perfect as it is. But this is just really important. So I'm going to just take a moment to read through this word for word. So around sharing pronouns, this recognizes that while gender diversity and trans-identified people have always existed in all societies, the movement toward recognizing the human rights of the trans community, including the range of gender pronouns, is relatively new and maybe unfamiliar to some. But this is a safe space, and we just ask that everyone be respected, and we all recognize that we're all learning. And this is what it all comes down to. And I think this is, really important when it comes to how this relates back to BIST and back to our community. This is kind of the crux of it. Oops, my apologies, my little spinning circle. So in terms of groups, this has actually come up, and I've had conversations with a few members around this. But which group do you belong in, right? Which group is right for you? So as we know, we have a variety of groups here at BIST, and most of these are pretty straightforward. So women's group is for anybody who identifies as women, including trans women. Men's group is for anyone who identifies as men, including trans men. And ABI group is open to all genders. So anyone who is non-binary, what I would encourage them to do is attend each group and then make a decision about which group fits best. And that's probably the group that you fit into best. Anyone who is gender fluid, we can have conversations, and I am free to email facilitators and let them know that you'll be attending different groups at different times. So if you feel like this is something that you're a little trepidatious about entering, then please do feel free to email me. All of our programs, when you're first attending your first group, you are encouraged to speak to me. So this is a conversation we can have at that point. So South Asian drop-in, it is open to all members of the Southeast Asian community. And again, that's all genders, as well as our peer-led caregiver group. So our peer-led caregiver group is for members who live with or care for a person with a brain injury. So I'm just gonna chat a little bit while Mary gets the video ready to go. But this is a video around transphobia and homophobia. And I think that it's something that was really important that we address this issue. Unfortunately, transphobia and homophobia still exist. And it is up to us as a community to stop it. It's important that we maintain a diverse, safe, inclusive space for all of our members of all ages, ethnic backgrounds, genders, and queer identities.
If you hear the same thing every day, you're going to start believing it. And some of this language is so negative and difficult to hear that it's, for me now, it's absolutely traumatizing. It hurts.
I think stopping it as soon as you hear it is really important because it sends a message to everyone that's around and you're not going to allow this to continue.
I can't say it to myself anymore. You can't say it to yourself ever. You have to say it to other people.
It is important because we are all people. It doesn't matter if you're gay or if you're not. If you respect the people, because like if you say it in a joke, people can take it personal.
I believe that everybody deserves the right to be who they are and not feel inferior or feel different from everyone else. To say those words actually hurt someone and make them feel less than human. And we're all human beings, and that is why I do not believe in those languages.
We assume that transphobic and homophobic language
is aimed at or geared towards someone specific, and you don't really think about the offshoot and the offcast of who's impacted by that type of language.
We should never make an assumption that just because we look around and we don't think we see a trans person, we don't think we see a queer person, that there aren't trans people and queer people everywhere, and that they won't be negatively impacted by these statements.
I think it's really important for people to stand up and not be afraid to call someone on language that is hurtful.
I don't think it should only be a situation where, you know, politically correct should just be a natural thing for people to just learn, do, practice, whichever one you want to choose. It's not nice. It's hurtful. It cuts to the core, and people might walk off and you don't even realize how much you've hurt them by it.
So if we stop and take that time to be caring and to talk to people about what they're saying, I think they can have a moment of learning, and people can walk away from that moment recognizing that they have done wrong, but also reaffirming that they won't do that wrong again.
It does nothing to talk about it afterwards or to talk about friends about something that happened. We've got to try to stop it right when it happens. That's how bullying works too.
We must start to stand up for people who are isolated, alone, and can't stand up for themselves. When do we as a society start to realize that when we have to be leaders and do something about that, because we've been bystanders for hundreds of years.
Don't have fear to express yourself out there. But for some people, it's about removing yourself from company or friendships that are negative influence on who you are.
Being out and being myself, and being proud of who I am, and not standing for those comments anymore changes people's lives, not just my own.
It's a simple action that holds each other accountable and will slowly shift a culture where homophobic and transphobic language is normalized to one where people feel respected, loved, and supported in being who they are. If I hear it, I will stop it.
I just want to, again, thank you everybody for your patience while we figure out all of these kinks in our technology. So BIST has always worked to ensure we support equity, diversity, and inclusion across all of our programs. I would like to take this moment to welcome Erin Palmer, who is here to introduce our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee here at BIST. Hello, Erin.
Okay, so BIST has recently formed the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. It's in the early stages still, but we're committed to our mission statement, which is right here. So, which is to provide education and increased access to BIST services by reviewing outreach and advocacy streams, connecting with diverse community partners, and providing guidance on programs and supports that promote cultural competence, cultural humility, and cultural responsiveness. And I just want to kind of quickly just go over those last three terms there: cultural competence, cultural humility, and cultural responsiveness. And so cultural competence is the ability to understand, appreciate, and interact with people from other cultures. So essentially, the more knowledge that we have about another culture, the more competent we are. But it kind of suggests that there's categorical knowledge that someone can have about a group of people, and that often leads to stereotyping and biases. So it's good to be culturally competent, but it kind of implies there's an endpoint. And cultural humility, which is my favorite, is a process of self-reflection and discovery to understand oneself and then others in order to build honest and trustworthy relationships. And with cultural humility, it basically involves understanding the complexities of identities. So basically, like even in sameness, there's difference. And it's just to, be basically, we will never be culturally competent, like fully culturally competent or fully competent. So, if you're operating with cultural humility, you're listening with interest and curiosity, and you're just having awareness of our own possible biases, and then also being non-judgmental when we hear things from other people, and then also just building partnerships with other peoples and groups who advocate for others. And then the other one is cultural responsiveness. And so that is the ability to learn from and relate respectfully with people of your own culture, as well as those from other cultural backgrounds. And so the difference between cultural competence and cultural responsiveness essentially is that responsiveness does not imply that one can be perfect, and that we're all open to adapting to the cultural needs to everyone that we interact with. And so all three together is what you kind of want.
So this is dedicated to equity, diversity, and inclusion. So as it says here, this is going to be the first of many conversations around pronoun use, gender diversity, and how we at BIST aim to promote a safe and inclusive space for all of our members. So for this evening, we are talking about pronouns. So this slide is speaking mostly about that. But I also want to bring in the concept of intersectionality. And that is just simply all of the parts of ourselves that make us who we are as individuals and as a community. So with the committee, we are going to be looking at a variety of intersectionalities and holding webinars and information sessions to help build a better understanding of us as individuals and us as a community here at BIST and as a whole within our city. So let's talk. There will be a time just after this evening to chat a little bit about some of our ideas, some of our thoughts, some of our feelings about the information that we were presented tonight. But first, I just want to thank everyone who could make it out this evening. I want to thank Alex Brazen, especially, for all of your hard work. I know you're going to be watching this afterward. I hope I did it justice. You put together such an informative presentation. And I want to thank Mary and Olivia and also Erin for your time and support coming out here tonight and bringing such incredible enthusiasm. I thank you all for your hard work. And again, this is going to be the first of many conversations on a variety of topics representing the diverse community here at BIST and at our city. So thank you. And with that, I'm going to close it out. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. And I will see you next time. Thank you, everyone.